Evening, class. Let's talk section 1.2. 1.2 is about data collection, and more importantly, it's about what's the difference between observational and designed experiments. I'm sorry if my table or my desk is moving. I have a friend's dog with me. I'm babysitting, and I started talking, so she's trying to climb into my lap. So Mocha's just being a little bit of a pain right now. So sorry about that. So let's talk about collecting the data. We have two forms. Oh, hold on here. I forgot to share screen. Sorry. We have two forms of data collection. And this is going to be important to understand the difference come chapter 4. All right. And we have an observational study. Now, what is an observational study? An observational study, and I'm sorry, she's back. An observational study is a study where we just sit back and we observe. We do not influence any outcomes. We don't do any tweaking of variables. We just sit back and we look. A lot of times observational studies is one where we went and pulled data from like the census. That would be observational because we didn't tweak it and change anything. The other form isn't a designed experiment. That is when we go through and we hold certain variables steady, but we tweak one variable to try to influence the outcome or the results. So observational, no tweaking, no interference. We just observe what happens. Designed experiment, we tweak. All right. So let's look. Say hi, Mocha. This is who's being a pain. And she's on the couch where she's not supposed to be. Yes. Mocha is a chocolate lab who is suffering from separation anxiety. You can't leave her by herself or she demolishes the house. And she just seems to have developed it. So we play babysitter. All right, lay down. Lay down. Anyway, let's look at these two studies. Cellular phone and brain tumors. Researchers want to determine whether there's an association between mobile phone use and brain tumors. To do so, 791,710 middle-aged women in the United Kingdom were followed over a period of 7 years. During this time, there were 1,261 incidences of brain tumors. The researchers compared the women who never used a mobile phone to those who used the mobile phone and found no significant difference in the incidence rate of brain tumors. Now, I'm going to tell you that is a observational study. All they did was observe and compare. This one, I'll let you guys go through and read that. Pause the video. All right. Researchers from the United States National Toxicology Program conducted a study to address the concerns that radiofrequency radiation, or RFRs, may be associated with an increased likelihood of developing brain tumors in humans. Certainly, it is unethical to expose humans to a potential carcinogen, so rats were used instead. The researchers randomly assigned 90 rats to 1 of 3 possible groups. Each of the groups are housed in a reverberation chamber that allowed the rats exposed to RFR. Group 1 observed there were no exposure. Group 2 was exposed to GSM modulated. Group 3 was CDMA modulated. Kind of skipping through. The rats in groups 2 and 3 were exposed to RFR using a continuous cycle of 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off. The exposed or unexposed. Turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. For a total time of 9 hours a day for 7 days a week. They also maintained 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark. They also maintained 72 Fahrenheit. You're seeing how I'm saying they're holding certain variables steady. The exposure amount of time was held steady. The amount of daylight, supposedly, fake daylight, they were exposed. Temperature held steady. Humidity held steady. Air exchange all held steady. In other words, they kept it across the entire group the same. The only part that differed was if he was exposed or not, and if he was exposed, what type. This is what I talk about tweaking variables. They tweaked one variable, and that's the exposure. All right, so let's go through. In both studies, the group of the research was determined whether radio frequencies from cell phones increase the risk of contracting brain tumors. Whether or not brain cancer was contracted is all right, that is known as a response variable. Oh, come on. In other words, what is a response variable? And just like it says, it's what is responding to it's the variable that is, how can I put this? It's the outcome. It's the variable that you are seeing happens, or the characteristic that happens. When you tweak this over here, do we change how something, the effect it has on something else? That is all a response variable. The level of phone usage is that is the part that's being explained, or the cause. And I shouldn't use the word cause. But the explanatory variable is what explains what happens. It's the part that we are tweaking. The explanatory variable is the part we tweak on a design to get a response. Cause, effect. This is the cause. This is the effect of the cause. That's actually a better description. So in research, we determine how varying the amounts of, what did we vary? The cause, the explanatory. All right, how it affects the value of the response variable. Again, I apologize. Very first chapter is kind of boring, but you do need to understand all this. All right. So we have response and explanatory. The explanatory is like the causation, and that's really still, it's in a design, that's true. The response is just that. So what changes? All right. Now, in a observational study, it doesn't like how I type. An observational study measures the value of the response without attempting to influence either the response or the explanatory. The experimental, we tweak those. Observational, hands off. All right. If a researcher randomly assigns individuals to a group, intentionally manipulates the value explanatory, and controls other explanatory variables, guess what? That is it's the designed experiment. All right. Okay. Please understand this observational, response, and explanatory. It's going to become important in chapter 4, understanding those. All right. So I kind of already answered this one. Which study was the observational? Well, study 1. Because no variables were altered or manipulated. That's simple. Which was the design? Study 2. Why? Certain variables were altered or manipulated, depending on how you want to put it, while other variables were held constant. They held what? Temp, air, amount of daylight. They had a lot of variables constant because we wanted to make sure that only the amount of the RFR was what was causing. That's the reason why we held everything we can steady. All right. So researchers determined long-term benefits of influenza. Let you read through that. And I want you to give me, or I should say give me, think about this. Read it and think about it. Would you recommend that all seniors go out and get a flu shot based on what you just read? Give you a moment. You've paused to read. Would you recommend? I wouldn't. Here's my response to it. Oh, I hate it when it's an actual picture. Because it won't let me type. Based on the results, I would say it looks promising. Because there are too many unknown variables that's not being mentioned. The long-term benefits, age 65 and older, looked at over 36,000 for 10 years, divided in 2 groups. Group 1 were seniors who got the flu vaccine. Group 2 were seniors who chose not to get the flu vaccine. After observing the seniors for 10 years, it was determined that seniors who got flu are 27% less likely to be hospitalized. and 48% less likely to die from flu. Okay, here's, as it says right underneath, the study has flaws. It has confounding variables. And this is what happens when we have multiple explanatory variables that we didn't hold steady, that can cause an outcome. Think about it. Did they hold anything steady besides the age? No. Do you think maybe there's lurking variables there? Answer is yes. That leads us in. Because when they did this study, they didn't take into account what was the health of these seniors. Now, a lot of times people that are 65 and older, they have underlying health issues. Was that taken into account? Fact? No, not mentioned. That alone. So this is the reason why explanatory variables and lurking variables and the confounding variables, they all, you got to watch. This is the reason why when we do designed experiments, we look very closely at all the variables and we make decisions. What can we hold steady? Because we don't want more than one variable causing a potential outcome. That's what caused the confounding. It makes it confusing. It confuses the results. You don't get good results. All right. Just keep those in the back of the mind. And that says state some potential variables. Well, I mentioned the one, health. What's the health of these people? How about warm climate versus cold climate? Do you think maybe those in the southern states get hit with the flu as bad as those of us in the northern states? That's a potential. We may want to break this down in regions like that. But those are some potential lurking variables. So that's the reason why I said I would not come out and state, there's that statistician coming out. Looks promising. Not going to say yes. Now, I can't start, you're going to hear me start stressing this. Observational studies, you cannot claim causation. Causation can only be claimed with designed experiment because we caused it by tweaking variables. Observational, we can only state association or correlation, but never causation. Be careful. I promise you right now, come final or midterm, I will trip up some of you because I'll make a causation statement like because of. So be careful. All right. All right. All right. Cross-sectional studies are collected from interval at a specific point in time and over very short, just like it says. These are the three types of observationals. Case control is the ones that we look in retrospect. In other words, it's already happened. We go back and we look. We pull records. That's looking back over a census data. Cohort is that we get a group of people who are allowed to be monitored over a period of time, and the characteristics are recorded. these are a type of perspective, all right? A lot of times these can be like, trying to think of a good example of a perspective. Like the cell phone one. They didn't tweak it, it's perspective. They watched it, that first case study. That would be a cohort because we had a group of people that allowed us to monitor them for 12 years or 7 years. That is a cohort. All right. Pause it, read through this because we're going to answer some questions. If you've read it, we first have to determine if it's an observational or experimental. All right. So we had researchers wanting to assess the long-term psychological effect of children evacuated during World War II. They obtained a sample of 169 former evacuees and a control group of 43 people who were children during war, but were not evacuated. The subjects' mental states were evaluated using questionnaires. All right. Is that a designed experiment or observational? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it is observational. I hate it when they just copy paste because it won't let me write. So we have an observational study. Because why? We're just looking at records. We did not tweak anything. Now, not only is it observational, but looking at this 3, cross-sectional, case control, or cohort. Well, it's a retrospect, right? Because World War II was kind of quite a few years ago, correct? So we're looking back in history. So not only is this a observational, but it's a case controlled observational. All right. Looking at B. Xylitol has proven effective for preventing dental cavities. When included in food or gum, a total of 75 Peruvian children were given milk with and some without xylitol and were asked to evaluate the taste after each. Overall, the children preferred the milk flavored with xylitol. Okay. Is that designed or observational? What do you think? Those that said designed, you're right, because we tweaked it. We tweaked the variable of the milk. Some got it with the xylitol added, some didn't. We tweaked the variable to change the outcome, and the outcome was the taste of the milk. All right, pause the video, read number 3 or number C. All right, what do you think? Observational or designed? Well, we had 975 homeless women who were surveyed to determine their level of satisfaction with the healthcare provided at a clinic versus healthcare provided by government's clinics. The women reported greater quality satisfaction. All right. Do you think this is observational or design? What do you think? It's observational because did we force them or we tweak any of the care they received at either clinic? No, it's just tell us what you feel like. All right. So it is observational. Now, scrolling back. Is it a cross-sectional, case control, or cohort? What do you think? Well, it's a cross-sectional because we're asking them about a point or a specific point. It's a specific point is when they received the care. All right. And it was done over a short period of time. Well, pause it for a minute. Read D. And I bet if you can't guess, it is going to be observational. But yes, it is observational because we had a group of 1,006 adolescents with pre-hypertension, and they were tracked over several years. All right. That makes it a cohort. It's a perspective. They've got the same issue, but we didn't tweak anything. All right. Now, census. I wrote this down and you think I forgot it? I looked up the value because I mean, 2010 is kind of getting a little old. So I updated, and let me look it back up. I apologize. All right. In 2010, the census cost, you ready? 5.4 billion. All right. And they employed approximately 635,000 temporary employees. That was in 2010. In 2020, that cost was now $14.2 billion. And I'm looking up the temporary workers. And this is the part that got me. Only 230,000 temporary employees. So in 2010, it cost 5.4 billion versus 2020 at 14.2, but only a third of the employees, approximately. That is what the census costs. So the reason why we bring this part up is because a census goes after the population. Remember, I talked about 1.1, why we don't do the difference between a population and a sample. Population's the whole group. Sample is just a portion of that group. Well, the census tries to survey and find the data out on the entire population of the United States. And look at how much it cost us. Now, last count, $14.2 billion. That's a lot of money. It's also why we only do it once every 10 years. Well, if it tripled, basically, in 10 years, what's it going to cost us in 2030 when we do it again? But this is the why we do mainly when we do statistical studies, we do samples. Cost. The cost of sampling is expensive enough, let alone trying to do the entire population of something. It becomes where it's unaffordable. So we do sampling for this reason. It's expensive. Also, why don't we do the entire population on when we do studies? It's because even though we claim to have done the entire population, did we? The answer is no. We have people that, believe it or not, still in this day and age, we have people who are illiterate. How about those who English is their second language, so they don't understand what they're getting. How about those that are homeless? The illegal aliens. They don't want to be counted. They don't want anybody to know where they're at. So it makes it to where we can't collect the info on everyone. So why spend that much money in an attempt to collect it on everybody? All right. Now, getting into the last thing. Web scraping. I don't know if you know what that is, but basically we go through and we extract information from the internet. That's your cookies and such. And there are pros and cons to this. All right. One of the things that a pro part. Price changes. You don't think competitors don't watch what other people in their market are charging for stuff? Yeah, they do it. So it's a way of mantra. I don't know about you. Sometimes when I'm shopping around, I go through and check. But guess what? It's also done without permission. Think Myers versus Walmart versus Kroger's on groceries. They send people into the stores and double check prices. They don't ask permission. So reason a lot of times you'll see some ads that say price will show what's in cart. They're hiding it. All right. This allows companies to learn more about you. And other companies. That's your cookie tracking. All right. But I'm going to ask a question though. Is it legal? No, but don't you block cookies? I block cookies. I actually run an Express VPN. I don't want anybody knowing where I'm at. Some people feel it's an invasion of privacy. So, is it legal? Pro. Just something specific on that one. Realtor websites. When you're getting ready to put your house in the market and things. Home price estimates. How much do you gonna sell something for? And start going out and looking. So what if you want to sell your car? You're going to look at what other people are selling that same car for. Kelley Blue Book. All right. But is it ethical? Some of this web scraping like that, is it ethical? Job postings is another great thing. Because if you're job hunting, I mean, you can put yourself out on what Monster, Intent. There's so many of them out there, and they will use a computer algorithm to match you to jobs. All right. Let's talk the last pro real quick. Ranking. This is another method. Think of ranking of sports teams, ranking of music. How do they know to rank these? Well, they can do a web scrape and see what music you're listening to, who's really following which teams the most. So rankings, all those are pros to web scraping. Now I left the last two to be discussed on cons by themselves. Personal info. With the web scraping and everything else, we're putting more and more of our personal info out there. Ever look at something online, next thing you know, you've got 10 different recommendations coming in. Hey, why is that? How did they know you looked at something, let's say at Menards, and all of a sudden you're getting emails from Lowe's? Your personal info is out there and your search history is out there. And with those cookies, so your personal info is out there from job postings, which you give freely because, hey, I want that good paying job. I need help find it. Think about all the info you put out there on those job postings. I'm not saying not to do it, but it's something to give you to think about. And the last con, but the reason I leave the last two to themselves, I don't know about you. Isn't it a little bit creepy when you have been looking at a purchase, like it's say at Menards, and all of a sudden you start getting things from other companies trying to say the exact same thing? Or you posted on Monster, but all these other 10 job searching companies start, hey, we got this job over here, but you didn't post there. Well, this is all from web scraping. And I do find it personally a little creepy that it really does bother me that just because I search this one thing, all of a sudden you're sending me emails and pop-ups and Facebook. It's like I wasn't even on Facebook, and all of a sudden I'm getting these ads for something on Facebook. What? No, I don't. It's creepy on how much they know. All right. Now, we are not going to use R. They talk about R, but I'm going to bring it up. R and SPSS. Those are the two big boys on the block for statistical analysis. We do not do statistics by hand. We don't. We use in this course StatCrunch because it is linked to your book and a lot of the data sets. Okay. So if you want to go through and practice a little bit, or if you've never used Excel, practice a little bit about saving data sets, because you will need to get, how do we copy an entire data set? Again, you heard me say, guess what? StatCrunch. If you watch one of my introductory orientation type video, I talk about how it does not use the right click on the mouse. You need to know that Control-C copies, Control-V pastes. StatCrunch uses only key commands. All right. So hopefully you didn't snooze through this. Again, I apologize. The first chapter, again, it's a little boring, but you have to have that foundation to understand why a little later on, well, what's the difference between observational and design? Well, if it's an observational, we can't say causation. We can only say correlation. Do we have some, is it qualitative versus quantitative? Well, qualitative, we use proportions. Quantitative, we use means or medians. This is the kind of stuff, this is the first couple sections, believe it or not, you're going to hear me keep referring back to as we progress. So even though it's a little bit on the boring side, you got to have a grasp on these basics, because it leads us to why we do what we do. All right. So that's another lecture down. And I hope I didn't snooze you too much. Good luck.